Even when God has been angry with us, and even when God has cursed us, and even when God has acted with anger towards us, He is still our God. Amen. And we are still His people. Amen. There's never a time, I've said this to you so many times, there's never a time when we are not children of God. Amen. There is never a time when we are not children of God. We may behave like we are not children of God when we are lost spiritually, but there is never a time when we are not children of God. Once God has called us as His children, as He has, there will never be a time when we are not children of God. Amen. Logo, namhlanje, it is something that we need to be proud of, we need to be secured in, and we need to boast about. At Paul Apostoli, may I not boast about anything else, but may I only boast about Christ. Amen. There will never be a time when you will not be a child of God. And so in this moment, God, not in so many words, but introduces hope and restoration to Israel. I know what you did, and I know what I said, and therefore I followed up on my word, and you experience certain things. So when this word comes, this new prophecy comes, they are actually, Israel, we are goisha. They are going through the most. And you know what, Zalwane, there are times, there are times when people go through the most and they turn back to God. And then there are times where people go through the most and they are ashamed. They know very well, Luguti, this may very well be God. This may be God acting against my life and my plans. But they are ashamed of going back to God because there's been this message that we are partly responsible for as a church, broadly. This message has come from the church. And so there are believers who grew up believing that God can cut you out completely and never ever want to see you again. But the nature of God is such that even in His anger with His children, it is like us. That is why we have that as human beings. Even though He is angry with you as His child, you are still His child. Amen. You will never cease to be God's child. Amen. You will never cease to be umntwana kaNkulunkulu. Amen. And I want to say that message that the church broadly once preached, umuntu uNkulunkulu angakulahla ungaphinde ungene. It is a message that comes from the devil. Amen. That wants to separate us completely from God. Amen. It is a message that came from the spirit of evil that found its way into our message as a church. Amen. That made people believe that God can divorce you completely. Amen. And that is why some people get so angry with God and they say, well, what kind of a God? And that is why some children of God have renounced or denounced bayekele ukuzazi kwabo their identity yokuthi hayi mina ke angisena baba ngoba wangilahla mina ubaba wami. Because the spirit that was preached from the pulpit told you ukuthi uyihlu kulahlile. And the church itself, let me not paint the church, but some of the people in the church behaved in a way that says, nye, uyihlu kulahlile, awulutho. Amen. And God says, but my child, you know my heart. But my child, you know my spirit. That's why nobody can tell you anything because the code is in your blood. Like a DNA, it is in your blood. And so when somebody says to you, your father has abandoned you, you say, not my father. Maybe your father because you are a child of Satan, but not my father. Because my father is love. My father is acceptance. My father is forgiveness. My father is peace and reconciliation between him and I. And my father's spirit lives in me. Even though I might be lost, but my father's spirit lives in me. Every day I go to sleep, I feel him. Every day I wake up, I feel him. He reminds me, ukuthi zazi ukuthi ungokabani, ukuthula makubekini.